Hey guys, this is Echo Soundworks with another tutorial for ADSRsounds.com, and in today's video we are going to be making a deep house style bass that has an organ element to it. So it's a kind of quintessential sound for deep house. With the sound that I made specifically for this tutorial, I wasn't trying to recreate an actual sound in a track, just kind of that general feel that I've heard multiple times in deep house. If you wanted to turn this bass into a future house bass, it'd be really easy to do. Just add more grit, distortion, and maybe tone down the organ element. So let's jump into recreating this. I do want to point out that I have detuned my my MIDI here by -12. So depending on where you're playing this on the keyboard as you're following along, will kind of determine the tone. But I was playing this at C3 and then I just pitched it down to -12. The reason why I did that was I have a really limited MIDI controller on the side of me right now. It's a old school Korg, and it doesn't have a transpose function, ironically. So I'm kind of just stuck with the keys. But yeah, so that's why it's detuned to -12 in my DAW. And I inevitably get this question on every tutorial I do. This is Logic X with a Pro Tools theme. It's not some new version of Pro Tools. All right, so jumping into the sound. First thing you're gonna do is activate the sub oscillator, and I'm gonna pitch this down to -2. So it's a really low pitch sound right now. We want this, and we're gonna hit direct out, which means I don't want this sub oscillator to go into my filter or to go into the effects or really anything. I have the choice of routing it into my filter over here, so I could just leave that off. But if I throw on effects, this gives me the option of having it go directly to the output of Serum, which is helpful for the deep house type sound. All right, now let's activate our noise. And our noise, I'm going to select an interesting noise type for this. We're going to use one of the kicks, the attack kicks that come with Serum. And I'm just going to use number 1. So I'll solo that. So it sounds kind of weird at first, but what you're going to do is you're going to want to one-shot this and then key track it. So it'll follow your pitch a little bit. You can kind of hear that, hopefully. Let me turn this up. Right, so it's adding like a little bit of attack to it, and for the pitch, I'm going to turn the pitch down to -7. Because that matched my sub, and I can bring my sub back in. All right, so there is what we have thus far. And speaking of the sub volume, let's actually turn this down to about 40 to 40%. And the volume for our noise, I'm going to turn up to around 40%. So that should be the sound that you have thus far. All right, jumping into the actual oscillators, I will include download links for one of the wavetables here, but don't worry if you don't have it or if you can't download it. You should be able to. Let me know in the description if you can't. But I don't want these Serum tutorials to turn into a, oh, I need this this wavetable to get this sound. So I'm going to point out what I was looking for in the specific wavetable that I used, because a lot of wavetables are going to have a carryover of different tones and just, things that you might find in multiple wavetables. So you don't need this exact one, but if you want to know exactly what it is, it's an Access Virus wavetable, and it is called Bad Signs. So I will solo that by turning off my sub and noise. Sounds like that. So anytime you're going to make this type of deep house organ bass, you don't want a super gritty tone like this. Like right now, this would be better for dubstep or electro. So I'm just going to cycle through the different wavetable positions. All right, that has that high-pitched organ sound up top. So let me pitch this down to -2. All right, so I could roll with that. Now I have it all the way up to 256. Let's dial it back. So I'm gonna go to about 242, and that's what cycle I'm on. So it should look like this for the single cycle. But yeah, I'm just looking for something that has an organ, a little bit of like a high-pitched organ type sound. So if I bring in the noise and sub, now we have this. All right, so let's activate oscillator B now. And you're going to choose one that this comes with Serum. It's analog BD sine, so it should look like this for now. So what we're going to do is solo this by turning off the sub, noise, and oscillator A. Detune or downtune this rather to -1. I'm going to give this 2 voices, and then for the actual detune, we don't want it to be a whole heck of a lot, so we're going to turn this down to about 0.1, 0.01, sorry. So blend won't really matter because you only have 2. For the phase and random, I'm going to turn this phase out a little bit here to maybe about 257, and then the random bring in as well. All right, so this specific wavetable has a good amount of cycles, so let me cycle through these and see what we get here. Again, I'm just looking for a tone that has a little bit punch to the bass with this one, but a little bit of a higher frequency. So I'll stop at about 85 or 90 or around there. All right, for the level, I'm going to turn this down. And for the level on oscillator, I'm going to turn up. So let's bring in all 4 oscillators, including the sub and noise. So all 2, oscillator A and B, sub and noise. All right, so that should be your sound or something there similar. Now I'm going to activate the filter here, and what we're going to use a multi-stage filter here, and we are going to use the LP, so it's low and peak 12. All right, so for the cutoff, this is going to be really important. With this type of sound, you're going to need to get most of the cutoff frequencies opening up with an envelope to add that punch and just that presence, make it sound professional and polished. So I'm going to turn the cutoff down a lot right now just so I can prepare for that next step in the process. I'm going to turn it to around 35 hertz. And then let's make sure oscillator B is going into it. And then the noise, I might bring into it, I might not, but we'll just leave that off for now. All right, so for the resonance, we're going to turn the resonance up just a shade. I believe by default it'll be at 9%, but don't quote me, or 10%, I think. Turn that up to about 13. The pan, keep in the middle. The drive, I believe, should be around, it should start at 0, and we're going to boost this up to about 3, so not a whole lot. Now this frequency, we're going to boost the frequency of the peak filter up to about 20%. You can see that happening right there. Right, and the mix keep all the way up. So, all right, so we got a little bit of work to do still with the sound to get it to sound cool. So let's jump down to our envelopes. Well, envelope 1 by default is, what's affecting the actual output. So let's jump over to envelope 2, and that's what we're going to use to modulate the filter. So the attack of this, keep at 0.5 milliseconds, so nice short. Hold, keep it 0. Now the decay, you're going to turn up to about 1.33 or 39 around there if you can get it. All right, that won't have any effect on the sound yet. I don't know why I hit the spacebar. So let's turn the sustain down all the way to 0%. And then on the release, we're going to turn this up to a good amount actually. So the filter stays open for a little bit as it plays to about 1.75. Actually, we'll go even higher. Let's go to about 2.70 if you can get close to there. 2.67. Let's try that. So take this little crosshair, drag it into your cutoff. Now, I'm going to turn the cutoff down even further now. I didn't want to do that as we were going, but I'm going to turn this down to 24 hertz and then have the cutoff frequency modulate up to just a little bit above that little dot above halfway. And there is the sound, you can actually start to hear it coming together. So now that we got that going on with the modulation and the filter, let's double back to our first envelope and get this set up properly. So keep the attack and hold where they are. The decay I'm going to turn down to about 1.32 or 132 milliseconds. So it's pretty short decay. Keep the sustain where it is, and the release we're going to go up to around 290 milliseconds if you can get close to that. 270. So now it's sounding even more bassier, which is good. All right, so let's go to our LFO now because I did modulate some things with the LFO 1. Now I kept it just on the default shape, and I'll do this quite a bit in Serum. It just adds some movement and depth to the sound. So what I'm going to do here is let's take the wavetable position out on oscillator B. All right, and I'm going to modulate the wavetable position of oscillator B. So for the actual amount or the rate, let's turn this down to a bar so it's slower. So what it's doing is it's cycling back and forth through that oscillator B wavetable. And I'm going to do the same thing with my oscillator A and turn this backwards to about -20 or -15, anywhere around there, whatever sounds good to your ear. So we'll do this more to about -15. Actually, we'll go turn this all the way out to 256. All right, so it's sounding pretty cool. Let's see if we can get it to be a little bit more deep house-ish. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go through one of the warp modes, and I'm going to choose the asymmetrical plus. So I like using this because if we go to here, we can see what it does. There's a sim plus, and here it is with just like a more typical mode like blend. It starts to pinch everything together, but what this does is it starts to pinch everything kind of over to the left. If I bring this back in and play around with this, it kind of fills out that bass frequency a little bit. All right, so let's jump to the effects now. We got some modulation happening. The sound is starting to go. So with this sound, I'm going to load up or activate rather the EQ, and I want this happening before everything else. So let's do the EQ here. And for the frequency down here, what I'm going to do is keep it pretty much where it is or near it. It should be around 210 hertz, but we're just going to and just cut out a little bit of it. All right, now on the top end, I'm going to boost this frequency up to, actually we're going to turn it down to about 1,900, I believe. 1,939. The Q, turn up a little bit. And I'm boosting low. So I'm just cutting out a little bit of lows and adding a pinch of high. All right, I'm going to activate the compressor now. And inside the compressor, what we're going to do is just compress this to make it a little bit more snappier inside, coming out of Serum rather. All right, and finally I'm going to add just a little bit of reverb to kind of add some space to this. So for the size, I'll turn down. I don't want a lot of pre-delay, but that's all up to you. Right, and there is pretty much the rest of the sound. You can dirty it up just a little bit with some distortion. So I like to use the sine fold with these deep house basses. And if you crank up the drive a lot, let me turn this down because it gets crazy. I mean, it gets absolutely insane, right? But if you modulate this with an envelope, it's kind of a cool effect. So I'll turn the mix down. Adding just a little bit of dirt to it. And there is basically a similar, it should be pretty close to the sound that we started with in the beginning. Things to take away from this would be the direct out coming from the sub. Helps keep your sub frequencies clean and not running into all this. The noise has a little bit of a kick attack coming, so add some snap to it. And then finally, the oscillators. You don't need the exact same wavetables. Just look for wavetables that have those elements to those sounds. And sometimes you'd be surprised. The first cycle of a wavetable may not sound anything like its last cycle. So definitely cycle through the wavetable position before you say, oh, this one's not going to work. If you guys have any questions or comments, let me know below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.